Some people wait months to find love. Some wait years. Kang Taehyun waited 10 years for a woman who didn't know he existed. 10 years since he'd watched a Tanzanian exchange student give a presentation that changed something fundamental in his chest. 10 years of building an empire, cleaning up his family's criminal legacy, and hoping for a second chance that seemed impossible. Then Lalima Mwambene walked back into Seoul, back into his life, and accidentally said the most ironic thing she could have said to a man who'd been waiting a decade. "If I didn't know better, I'd think you were waiting for me." She had no idea how right she was, and he had no idea how to tell her the truth without scaring her away forever. But that 10-year wait started with something simple, something small. A moment that seemed completely forgettable to one person and completely unforgettable to the other. It started with a girl who was lost. The campus looked like an impossible maze. Lalima Mwambene checked her phone for the third time in 2 minutes. 15 minutes until her presentation. 15 minutes until the most important moment of her academic life, and she had absolutely no idea where she was supposed to be. The email had said Building C, Auditorium 203. Simple enough. Except every single building on this campus looked exactly the same, and none of them had clear signs in English. Her Korean was decent for everyday conversation, but architectural signage was apparently beyond her skill level.
"Excuse me," she tried stopping a group of students walking past.
They were laughing about something, caught up in their own world. One of them glanced at her, but they kept moving, didn't even slow down. Her hands were shaking now. The folder with her presentation notes felt slippery. She realized her palms were sweating, which was ridiculous, because Seoul in October wasn't even warm. This was pure panic. She'd worked on this presentation for 3 months. Her entire scholarship for next semester depended on making a good impression at this international youth forum. Coming all the way from Tanzania to study in South Korea had been her dream since high school. Her grandmother had scraped together every spare shilling to help fund it, telling Lalima that education was the one thing nobody could ever take away. And now she was going to ruin everything because she couldn't find a building. Looking for the forum? A girl with bright pink hair paused near her. "Yes, Building C. Do you know where that is?" The girl pointed vaguely to the left. "That way, I think. Or maybe that way?" She pointed right, then shrugged apologetically. "Sorry, I'm a first year. Still lost myself half the time." Lalima thanked her anyway and picked a direction. Left seemed more logical. She walked quickly, her traditional Tanzanian dress swishing around her legs. She'd worn it specifically for the presentation, wanting to represent her culture properly. Now she was worried she'd show up sweaty and frazzled and completely ruin the effect. The buildings all looked identical. Modern, clean, utterly unhelpful. She tried another student. "Building C?" He looked at her blankly and said something in rapid Korean she didn't catch before walking away. 12 minutes now. Lalima felt her throat getting tight. No, she couldn't cry. Not here, not now. She was a grown woman, 20 years old, studying international relations. She could handle finding a building, except she clearly couldn't. She ducked under a tree, trying to catch her breath and think logically. The campus map on her phone was useless because she didn't know where she currently was to orient herself. She could call someone, but who? The forum organizers would think she was completely unprofessional. Her host family didn't know the campus. Her classmates were all in different parts of the city. The burning in her eyes got worse. One tear escaped and she wiped it away angrily. "Are you looking for the International Forum?" The voice was calm, steady. "Male." Lalima looked up and saw a young man about her age standing a few feet away. He wore jeans and a simple jacket with a volunteer badge clipped to it. His face was kind. That was the first thing she noticed. Just genuinely kind eyes. "Yes," she managed to say. Her voice came out shaky and she hated it. "I'm supposed to present in." She checked her phone again. 11 minutes and I have no idea where Building C is. "Follow me," he said immediately. "I'm volunteering at the forum today. I'll take you there." Relief crashed through her so intensely she almost started crying again, but for a different reason. Thank you so much. I've been wandering around for 20 minutes, and everyone keeps pointing in different directions. and I was starting to think I'd miss my entire time slot. The campus signage is terrible, he said as they started walking. His pace was quick, but not so fast she had to run. Even students who've been here for years still get lost sometimes. You're an exchange student? From Tanzania, just started this semester. Your Korean is good. Not good enough to read building signs, apparently, she said, then immediately worried that sounded rude. But he smiled slightly, so maybe it was okay. They walked in silence for a moment. Lalima was trying to run through her presentation in her head, but her brain felt like static. The panic had scrambled everything. First big presentation? He asked. How did you know? You looked terrified, in a very polite, trying to hide it way. She laughed despite herself. That obvious? Only a little. They turned a corner, and he pointed to a building ahead. That's Building C. The forum is on the second floor, room 203. You're absolutely saving my life right now. The stairs are faster than the elevator, he added as they reached the entrance. He held the door open for her. Second floor. Turn right. Third door on the left. Got it. She paused at the base of the stairs and turned back to him. What's your name? I want to thank you properly after this is done. He smiled again. That same small, quiet smile. Good luck with your presentation. You'll do great. Then he was gone, disappearing back outside before she could insist on getting his name. Lalima didn't have time to think about it. She ran up the stairs, found room 203, and slipped inside with exactly 3 minutes to spare. The auditorium was bigger than she'd expected. At least 100 people scattered throughout the seats. The forum organizer spotted her and waved her over with barely concealed relief. Miss Mwambene, excellent timing. You're up after this speaker finishes. Lalima found a seat in the front row and tried to calm her racing heart. She pulled out her notes, smoothed down her dress, took several deep breaths. The current speaker was talking about educational exchange programs in Europe. She tried to focus, to ground herself in the familiar academic language. But part of her brain was still thinking about the volunteer who'd helped her. His kindness had been so natural, so easy. No big production, just simple help when someone needed it. In her panicked state, it had felt like a miracle. And now I'd like to introduce Lalima Mwambene, from Tanzania, the moderator was saying. She'll be speaking about cultural bridge building and international youth programs. This was it. Lalima stood up and walked to the podium. The lights were bright, all those faces looking at her. For a second, the panic tried to come back. Then she remembered the volunteer's words, "You'll do great." She smiled at the audience and began. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lalima Mwambene, and I want to tell you about my grandmother. The presentation flowed. Once she started talking about her grandmother's philosophy on cultural understanding, everything else fell away. She told the story of how her grandmother had hosted exchange students in their small home in Dar es Salaam, how she'd taught Lalima that kindness didn't need translation, that seeing people as people rather than as foreigners was the first step to real understanding. She saw people nodding, smiling. When she made a joke about her grandmother's insistence on feeding every visitor until they could barely move, the whole room laughed. She talked about the programs she wanted to develop, ways to create meaningful exchange rather than surface-level tourism. She discussed the challenges of true cultural bridge building and proposed solutions based on research and personal experience. When she finished, the applause was genuine and warm. The moderator asked if there were questions, and several hands shot up. For the next 15 minutes, Lalima fielded questions about implementation, funding, cultural sensitivity concerns. She answered each one thoughtfully, drawing on her research and lived experience. It was going so much better than she'd even hoped. After the Q&A session ended, several people came up to talk to her personally. Other students wanted to exchange contact information. A professor from the sociology department asked if she'd be interested in joining a research group. The forum organizer congratulated her on an excellent presentation. Lalima felt like she was floating. Once the crowd around her cleared, she looked around the auditorium. She wanted to find the volunteer who'd helped her. Wanted to tell him that he'd been right, that it had gone well, that his small act of kindness had made all the difference. but the auditorium was emptying out and she didn't see him anywhere. She went back downstairs and outside, scanning the campus for a volunteer jacket. There were several volunteers directing people to different forum sessions, but none of them were him. "Excuse me," she asked one volunteer, a girl with glasses. "I'm looking for another volunteer. He helped me find the building earlier. About this tall, dark hair, really kind face." The girl looked puzzled. "We have like 30 volunteers today. Can you be more specific?" He was wearing the volunteer jacket, had a badge. "He was here maybe 30 minutes ago." "Sorry, I just got here. Maybe try the volunteer coordinator?" "There's a table in the student center." Lalima went to the student center. The coordinator checked the volunteer list, but without a name. There was no way to identify who had helped her. "We have 12 male volunteers working the forum today," the coordinator said. "They're all rotating through different stations." For 20 more minutes, Lalima searched. She went back to Building C, walked around the main forum areas, even checked the cafeteria, but she couldn't find him. Eventually, she had to give up. She had 2 more forum sessions to attend, and tomorrow she had regular classes. She couldn't spend all day looking for someone whose name she didn't even know. But she didn't forget him. That quiet smile, the calm way he'd taken charge of the situation. The genuine, "you'll do great," that had somehow grounded her. She never forgot. What Lalima didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the volunteer had been watching. Kang Taehyun had slipped into the back of the auditorium just as Lalima started speaking. He'd only meant to check that she'd made it on time, then get back to his other volunteer duties. But something had made him stay. He watched her transform from the panicked, lost girl he'd found under the tree into this confident, passionate speaker. She lit up when she talked about her grandmother, made complex ideas accessible, commanded the room's attention not through force but through genuine warmth and intelligence. When she told the story about her grandmother feeding exchange students until they protested, Taehyun found himself smiling. When she discussed the challenges of cultural bridge building with such nuanced understanding, he found himself leaning forward, completely drawn in. And somewhere during that 30-minute presentation, something in his chest shifted. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was. It wasn't just that she was smart, though clearly she was brilliant. It was something else. Something about the way she saw the world, the way she talked about building bridges instead of walls, about seeing people as people. In his world, in his family, people were assets or threats. Tools or obstacles. He'd grown up learning to categorize everyone by their usefulness or danger level. But listening to Lalima talk about her grandmother's philosophy, about choosing kindness and understanding, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. The idea that there were still people in the world who operated from a place of genuine goodness rather than strategy. When her presentation ended, Taehyun stayed for the Q&A, watched how she handled challenging questions with grace and thoughtfulness, saw other students flock to her, drawn by the same warmth that had caught him. He should have left then, should have gotten back to his volunteer duties, and forgotten about the Tanzanian exchange student who'd gotten lost on campus. But he couldn't. When the auditorium cleared, he waited outside, trying to work up the courage to approach her. To say what? "Congratulations on your presentation?" That seemed weak. Ask if she wanted to get coffee? Too forward. She'd just met him, barely knew him, would probably think he was creepy. While he was still debating, he saw her come outside and start looking around, looking for someone. Looking for him, he realized. His heart did something strange. She wanted to find him, to thank him, probably, but still, she'd thought about him enough to search. He should have walked over, should have made it easy for her. But Taehyun had learned young that wanting something and taking it were two different things. And something told him that this girl, this bright, warm, brilliant girl, deserved better than getting involved with someone like him. Because there were things about Kang Taehyun that she didn't know, things that would have changed the grateful smile she'd given him, like the fact that his father ran one of Seoul's most powerful crime syndicates. That Taehyun was being groomed to take over eventually, that the family business included things that would horrify someone who believed in kindness without translation and building bridges between people. So instead of walking over, he watched her search for him from a distance. watched her ask other volunteers, check the coordinator's table, retrace her steps around the building. Part of him wanted her to find him so badly it hurt. Part of him was relieved when she finally gave up and went back to the forum. That night, Taehyun lay awake thinking about her, about the presentation, about the way she'd talked about her grandmother with such love and respect, about how her whole face had lit up when the audience laughed at her stories. He told himself to forget about it, to forget about her. It had been one meeting, one conversation. He was being ridiculous. But the next day, he found himself looking up the International Student Office, found the forum program with participant names. Lalima Mwambene from Tanzania, studying international relations. He told himself he was just curious, just wanted to know her name. But he saved the program, kept it. For the next 2 weeks, Taehyun volunteered for every campus event that might involve international students. He told himself he was just being helpful, just fulfilling his volunteer requirements. Really, he was hoping to see her again. He finally spotted her in the library, bent over a pile of books, completely absorbed in her studies. He watched from behind a bookshelf, feeling increasingly creepy about the whole thing, but unable to walk away. She was wearing regular clothes this time, jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back. She chewed on her pen when she was thinking, he noticed. Occasionally wrote notes in the margins of her books. At one point, she smiled at something she was reading, and Taehyun felt that same pull in his chest. Just talk to her, he told himself. Walk over, say hi, mention the forum. It's not that complicated. But before he could move, another student approached her table. They started talking, then laughing. The student sat down and they bent over the books together, clearly working on some shared assignment. Taehyun left the library without saying anything. This was better, he told himself. She was making friends, building a life here. She didn't need some volunteer she barely remembered complicating things. 3 weeks after the forum, Taehyun heard through the International Student Office that Lelima's exchange program was ending. She was going back to Tanzania. He told himself it was for the best. He almost believed it. On her last day on campus, Taehyun saw her one more time. She was with a group of friends, taking photos by the main gate. She was laughing, hugging people goodbye, crying a little. She looked happy, sad to leave, but happy with her experience. That was enough, Taehyun told himself. She'd had a good semester, made good memories. That was all that mattered. He didn't approach her, didn't say goodbye, just watched from a distance as she left campus for the last time, climbed into a taxi with her luggage, and disappeared from his life. The next day, he went to the International Student Office with a specific question. Did they have contact information for Lalima Mwambene? The administrator gave him a sympathetic look. I'm sorry, we can't give out personal information about students. Privacy policy. Even if I just want to send a message, a goodbye from the volunteer team, you can leave a message with us and we'll forward it if she provided a forwarding address. But many exchange students don't, especially international ones. Taehyun wrote a simple message. Dear Lalima, congratulations on completing your exchange program. Your presentation at the Youth Forum was inspiring. Wishing you all the best. A fellow volunteer. He never knew if she received it. 2 months later, Taehyun graduated. His father immediately pulled him into the family business, started training him on operations, introductions to key people, the whole machinery of the organization. Taehyun told himself to focus, to forget about the Tanzanian girl with the warm smile and the grandmother's wisdom. But he didn't. He kept the forum program. Sometimes, late at night, when the weight of his family's expectations felt crushing, he'd take it out and read her name. Remember her presentation about building bridges and seeing people as people. It reminded him that somewhere in the world, people still believed in those things, still operated from kindness rather than calculation. 1 year became 2. 2 became 5. Taehyun rose in the organization. When his father died suddenly, leadership fell to him at 27. Too young, some of the old guard said. Too idealistic. But Taehyun had a vision. He started systematically legitimizing the family businesses, moving money from illegal operations into legal ones. It was slow, dangerous work. Some members of the organization resisted. Some actively worked against him. But he persisted. And through it all, he never forgot her. He'd tried dating other women, nice women, appropriate women from good families, women who understood his world, or at least wouldn't ask too many questions about it. None of them were right. None of them made him feel anything close to what he'd felt watching a 20-year-old girl give a presentation about her grandmother's philosophy. His assistant thought he was too picky. His friends thought he was married to his work. His family thought he needed to settle down and produce heirs. Nobody knew he was measuring every woman against the memory of someone he'd met exactly once, 10 years ago. It was absurd. Taehyun knew it was absurd, but he couldn't help it. Sometimes he looked her up online, found a few professional profiles. She'd gone back to Tanzania, worked for several NGOs, eventually got her master's degree in international relations. Her career seemed to be going well. She looked happy in her profile pictures. Older, more confident, but with that same warm smile. Good, Taehyun thought. She deserved to be happy. 5 years became 8. 8 became 9. Taehyun had mostly given up hope of ever seeing her again. The world was too big. Too many people, too many paths that never crossed twice. But then, 9.5 years after Lalima Mwambene had walked into his life for 30 minutes and completely rearranged something in his chest, Taehyun's assistant handed him a very interesting piece of information. Sir, the Seoul International Conference Center just sent over their new staff roster. They hired several new interpreters and cultural liaisons for their expanded programming. And I need to know this because... His assistant smiled slightly. Because one of them is Lalima Mwambene from Tanzania. I remembered you mentioned her name once, in connection with that youth forum you volunteered for in university. Thought you might be interested. Taehyun's heart stopped. She's here? In Seoul? Moved here 2 weeks ago according to the file. Permanent position, not a temporary contract. Permanent. She was here permanently. For the first time in nearly 10 years, Taehyun allowed himself to hope. Thank you, he managed to say. Yes. Thank you for the information. After his assistant left, Taehyun sat alone in his office and stared at the Seoul skyline. She was here. After all this time. After he'd convinced himself it would never happen. She was here. The universe, it seemed, believed in second chances. Now he just had to figure out what to do with his. Taehyun spent 3 days planning. Not planning in the obsessive, calculated way his organization usually operated. More like a nervous university student trying to figure out how to talk to his crush without looking like an idiot. Which, he realized, was essentially what he was. A 30-year-old man who'd built a criminal empire, negotiated with dangerous people, restructured an entire organization, and he was terrified of approaching one woman. You could just call the conference center and request her services, his assistant Soyeon suggested. You have legitimate business needs for an interpreter. That's too obvious. You could attend one of the conferences where she's working. Also too obvious. Soyeon sighed. Sir, with respect, you're overthinking this. I've waited 10 years. I'm not going to mess it up by being creepy or pushy. So your plan is to do nothing. My plan is to create an opportunity that feels natural. What he really wanted was to see her first. To confirm she was really here. Really the same person. 10 years was a long time. People changed. Maybe the Lalima he remembered was more fantasy than reality. Or maybe, a small voice in his head whispered, you'll see her, and feel nothing. Maybe the whole thing was just nostalgia for a simpler time in your life. He needed to know. So Taehyun did something he rarely did. He went out alone, without security, without an agenda. Just drove through Seoul like a normal person. He found himself near the conference center on a Wednesday afternoon. Told himself he was just in the area, just happened to be passing by. The lie was transparent even to himself. He parked across the street and waited. The conference center was huge, glass and steel, constantly busy. People streamed in and out. He had no idea if she was even working today. This is pathetic, he told himself. You're literally stalking her workplace. He was about to leave when he saw her. Lalima walked out of the main entrance with 2 other women, all of them carrying conference folders. She was laughing at something one of them said. She wore professional clothes now, a nice dress and jacket, her hair styled differently than he remembered, more sophisticated. But that smile, that was exactly the same. Taehyun's breath caught. 10 years dissolved. He was 21 again, watching her give that presentation, feeling something in his chest reorganize itself around this stranger who talked about building bridges. She was real, she was here, and every feeling he'd carried for a decade came rushing back with enough force to make him grip the steering wheel. One of her companions said something, and Lalima threw her head back laughing. The sound carried across the street. God, he'd missed that laugh without even knowing he was missing it. They walked to a nearby cafe. Taehyun watched them go inside, watched through the window as they ordered drinks and settled at a table, watched Lalima gesture animatedly while telling a story, her whole face lighting up. He sat in his car for 20 more minutes, just watching her exist. Then he drove away before it got truly creepy. But now he knew. The feelings were real, she was real, and he needed to find a way back into her life that wouldn't terrify her or make her think he was unhinged. The opportunity came 2 days later. Taehyun had a dinner meeting with some business partners at an upscale restaurant. Legitimate partners, nothing questionable, just boring contract negotiations. He was barely paying attention when he saw her. Lalima walked into the restaurant with a group of people, clearly colleagues from the conference center. They were laughing, celebrating something. The hostess led them to a table that, Taehyun noticed, was actually reserved for him. There had been some mix-up with the reservation system. The hostess looked mortified when she realized, came rushing over to apologize. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Kang. There was a computer error. We have another table ready for you, a private section. Please let me show you." "It's fine," Taehyun said. His mind was already working. Not a problem at all. The private section had a partial view of the main dining area. He could see Lelima's table from where he sat, could hear occasional bursts of their laughter. His business partners droned on about shipping contracts. Taehyun nodded at appropriate moments, but most of his attention was across the room. Lalima looked happy, relaxed. She fit in easily with her colleagues, made them laugh, listened intently when they talked. She'd ordered something that looked spicy and was teasing one of her companions for playing it safe with a mild dish. She belonged here, Taehyun thought, in Seoul, in this life. She'd made it her home. His meeting wrapped up. The partners left. Taehyun should have left too. Instead, he stayed, ordered a drink, sat in the private section and tried not to obviously stare at the woman who'd haunted him for 10 years. Then he saw Lalima's group notice the mistake, saw them realize they'd accidentally taken someone else's reservation. One of them, a young woman with short hair, kept glancing nervously toward the private section. "You should go apologize," someone said, loud enough for him to hear. "Why me?" "Because you're the one who confirmed the reservation wrong." "I'm not going over there. He looks intimidating." They were talking about him, Taehyun realized. Then he heard Lalima's voice, warm and amused. "He's just a person. I'll go apologize. It's the polite thing to do." His heart started racing. She was coming over. She was actually coming over. Taehyun set down his drink and tried to look casual, approachable, not like a man who'd been half in love with her for a decade. "Excuse me?" That voice. Soft, accented, exactly how he remembered. He looked up. Lalima stood a few feet away, smiling politely. Professional. She had no idea who he was, no recognition in her eyes at all. Of course not, he thought. It had been one brief meeting 10 years ago. And he'd been just another volunteer in a jacket. Forgettable. "Yes?" he said, keeping his voice calm. "My colleagues and I, we were told we accidentally took your table earlier. I just wanted to apologize and thank you for being understanding about it." "It wasn't a problem," he said. "Honest mistake." She smiled, and he felt it like a physical thing. "Well, thank you anyway. They dared me to come over here actually. Said you looked too intimidating and they were scared." He couldn't help the small smile. "And you're not scared?" "Not really. You seem patient. Like the kind of person who wouldn't get upset over a table mix-up." She paused, then her expression shifted to something playful. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were waiting for me. The words hung in the air. Taehyun saw the exact moment she realized how that sounded. Her eyes went wide. Color flooded her cheeks. "Oh my God. I'm sorry. That came out so wrong," she said quickly. "I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't trying to flirt or assume or... I don't even know what I meant. I should just stop talking and go back to my table before I embarrass myself further." She was already turning away when Taehyun heard himself say, "Maybe I was." She froze, turned back slowly. "What?" "Waiting for you," he said. The words came out steadier than he felt. "Maybe I was." Her mouth opened slightly. Those wide eyes studied him, like she was trying to figure out if he was joking or flirting back, or making fun of her. All three, Taehyun thought, and also telling the absolute truth. "I'm Taehyun," he said, extending his hand. "Kang Taehyun." "Lelima," she replied, shaking his hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Lelima Mwambene." "I know," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, your colleagues mentioned your name earlier." When they took the table, it was a plausible lie. She seemed to accept it. "Right, of course." She glanced back at her table where her colleagues were blatantly watching. "I should probably get back. Would you like to sit for a moment?" The invitation came out before he could think better of it. She hesitated. He could see her weighing it. Smart woman, being cautious with strangers. "Just for a minute," she said finally. Taehyun gestured to the chair across from him. She sat down, setting her purse in her lap, still ready to bolt if needed. "You're new to Seoul?" he asked, even though he knew the answer. "Sort of. I studied here years ago as an exchange student. Now I'm back for work. I'm an interpreter and cultural liaison." "That sounds interesting." "It is. I love it. I get to help people understand each other, you know? Bridge the communication gaps." She said it with genuine enthusiasm, the same passion she'd had in her presentation a decade ago. "What about you? What do you do?" "Business," he said vaguely. "Import, export, investments. A bit of everything." "That sounds complicated." "Sometimes, but I prefer complicated problems. Simple ones are boring." She laughed. "Most people would say you're crazy." "Most people are boring too." Another laugh. The sound made something in his chest settle into place. They talked for 10 minutes. Just easy conversation. She told him about adjusting to Seoul again, how the city had changed in the years she'd been away. He asked careful questions, nothing that would reveal how much he already knew. The whole time, he was cataloging details. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. How she leaned forward when she was interested in what someone was saying. The fact that she'd ordered the spiciest thing on the menu because she missed the flavors from home. "I really should get back," she said eventually, but she sounded reluctant. "Of course." He pulled out a business card. "In case you ever need anything. Seoul can be overwhelming, even the second time around." She took the card, studied it. Simple design, just his name and number. He'd specifically chosen one without the company name, didn't want to scare her off. "Thank you," she said. "It was nice meeting you, Taehyun." The way she said his name, carefully pronouncing each syllable, made his heart do something complicated. "The pleasure was entirely mine, Lelima." She stood up, gave him one more smile, then walked back to her table. Taehyun watched her go, watched her friends immediately start pestering her with questions, watched her laugh and wave them off. Then she glanced back at him. Their eyes met across the restaurant. He raised his glass slightly. A small acknowledgement. She looked away quickly, but he saw the smile. After she left with her colleagues an hour later, Taehyun sat in the empty private section and let himself feel the full weight of what had just happened. She'd walked up to him, talked to him, said even accidentally, "I'd think you were waiting for me." If she only knew. 10 years he'd waited, and now she was here, real and warm, and just as incredible as he remembered. He wasn't letting her disappear again. The next morning, Taehyun called his assistant. "I need an interpreter for the East African Partnership meetings next month. We have 3 on retainer already, sir. I want someone new. Someone with cultural expertise, not just language skills. Someone who understands the context, not just the words. Soyeon was quiet for a moment. Does this someone happen to work at the Seoul International Conference Center? Just make the request. Through proper channels. I want this to be completely professional. Of course, sir. 2 days later, Soyeon reported back. Miss Mwambene has been assigned to your project. Her supervisor was very pleased with the request. Apparently, she has specific experience with Tanzanian and Kenyan business culture. When does she start? You have an initial consultation meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 9. Tomorrow. He'd see her again tomorrow. Taehyun had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, had faced down dangerous men without flinching, but the thought of seeing Lalima again made him nervous as a teenager. He changed his shirt 3 times the next morning, before settling on something professional but not too formal. Told himself he was being ridiculous. This was a business meeting. She was providing a professional service. The fact that his heart was racing was completely inappropriate. At exactly 9, Soyeon showed Lalima into his office. She stopped in the doorway, clearly surprised. "Oh, it's you. Hello again," Taehyun said, standing up. "Thank you for coming. I didn't realize. The request just said Kang Enterprises, and I didn't connect." She trailed off, then seemed to gather herself. "This is interesting. I can explain." "Please do." He gestured for her to sit. She did, but her body language was guarded now. "I really do need an interpreter," Taehyun said, choosing honesty. "I have meetings scheduled with partners from Tanzania and Kenya over the next few weeks. When I mentioned it to my team, they recommended someone from your company. When they said your name, I requested you specifically. Because we met at the restaurant. Yes, that doesn't seem entirely professional." "You're right," he admitted. "But I was planning to contact you anyway. This just gave me a legitimate reason to do it sooner." She studied him with those intelligent eyes. "I need to know this is a real job, not just an elaborate excuse to, whatever this is. It's a real job. I'll pay your company's full rate. The meetings are scheduled and the partners are expecting professional interpretation. I wouldn't waste your time or theirs. But you are interested in me, personally." "Very much so," he said without hesitation. "But that's separate. If you want to keep this purely professional, I'll respect that completely. You'll do the job. I'll be a professional client, and that's all." She was quiet for a moment. "And if I don't want to keep it purely professional?" Firmly see. Hope flared in his chest. "Then after the project is finished, I'd like to take you to dinner, properly. Not as a client, just as someone who would very much like to know you better. You don't even know me." "Not yet," he agreed. "But I'd like to." Another long moment of consideration. "Then, okay, let's start with the professional part. Tell me about these meetings." Relief washed over him. Of course. They spent the next hour discussing the project. Taehyun had prepared thoroughly, knew exactly what he needed, could articulate it clearly. He watched Lalima take notes, ask intelligent questions, offer suggestions he hadn't considered. She was good at this. Really good. "You've done your homework," she observed at one point. "I don't like going into situations unprepared." Clearly. She smiled, and it felt like sunshine. "This actually sounds like interesting work. Cultural context is so important in international negotiations, and most people ignore it completely. That's why I wanted you." The words came out more weighted than he intended. She caught it, color rising in her cheeks again. "For the job," he clarified. "Because of your expertise." "Right, of course." But they both knew he'd meant something more. The first official meeting was 2 days later. The Tanzanian partners arrived exactly on time, professional and courteous. Lalima greeted them in Swahili, and the change in the room's atmosphere was immediate. They relaxed, smiled, responded to her warmth. Taehyun watched her work, and understood why she was so good at this. She didn't just translate words. She translated intent, context, cultural nuance. When one partner made a joke that wouldn't translate well, she found an equivalent that made everyone laugh. When there was potential for cultural misunderstanding, she smoothly clarified without making anyone feel ignorant. And she made Taehyun look good, made him seem more culturally aware, more respectful, more trustworthy than he would have managed alone. The meeting went better than he'd hoped. By the end, the partners were relaxed and engaged. Real progress had been made. "That was excellent," one of the partners said to Lalima as they were leaving. "You should work with Mr. Kang permanently. He's the first Korean businessman who actually seems to understand us." After they left, Taehyun turned to Lalima. "That went well." "It did. You're good at this. I had an excellent interpreter. I mean, the business part. You made them comfortable. That's not easy across cultural lines." He was pleased by the compliment, more than he should be. "I've learned that people respond better to respect than pressure. It takes longer sometimes, but the results last." Something flickered in her expression, like she was filing that information away. "Same time Thursday for the Kenyan partners?" she asked, checking her schedule. "Actually," Taehyun said, "I have a charity event tomorrow night. Cultural Exchange Foundation. They're honoring international educators. I could use someone who understands the context. Would you be available?" "That's not really interpretation work." "I know. I'm asking as a separate job. I'll pay your rate for the evening." She hesitated. He could see her weighing it. "What would I need to do?" "Attend with me. Help me avoid making cultural mistakes when I talk to the honorees. Most of them are from African countries. I don't want to accidentally offend anyone." It was reasonable, professional even. He could see her thinking the same thing. "What's the dress code?" "Formal. If you need to buy something, I can arrange." "I have a dress." She cut him off firmly. He recognized the boundary. Good. He didn't want her to feel bought. "Then I'll pick you up at 6. You don't know where I live. Text me your address," he said, then added, "or I can meet you there if you'd prefer." Another pause, testing him, maybe, seeing if he'd push. "You can pick me up," she said finally, "but this is still work." Of course. Except when he picked her up the next evening, it didn't feel like work at all. Lalima opened the door wearing a deep blue dress that made her skin glow. Her hair was styled elegantly. She looked absolutely stunning. "You look beautiful," Taehyun said, because not saying it would have been impossible. "Thank you. You look very nice too." The drive to the event was easy. They talked about her day, about the forum preparations, about nothing important. But Taehyun loved every second of it. The event itself was at a beautiful venue, all elegant lighting and carefully curated cultural displays. But what caught Lalima's attention immediately was how people reacted to Taehyun. They didn't just greet him, they deferred to him. There was a careful respect in how people said his name, a weight to their politeness that went beyond normal social courtesy. "You know a lot of people here," she observed quietly. "I donate to the foundation. They always invite major donors." It was true, but not the whole truth, and he could see her noticing the gaps. Like the two men in dark suits who stayed near them all evening, trying to be subtle, but clearly security. Like how a businessman approached nervously to say hello, and Taehyun's brief response sent the man away looking relieved rather than dismissed. Like the way the event organizer treated him with an extra layer of deference that had nothing to do with donation amounts. Throughout the evening, Taehyun introduced Lalima to various people. She was perfect, helping him navigate conversations, providing cultural context, making everyone feel valued. But he could feel her questions building. During dinner, she leaned close and whispered, "Okay, what's actually going on?" "What do you mean?" "People are treating you like royalty. That's not normal donor treatment." Taehyun's jaw tightened slightly. "My family has influence in Seoul. People tend to be overly respectful because of it." "What kind of influence?" "The kind that's been around for a long time. It's complicated." "You keep saying that, complicated." He wanted to tell her everything, wanted to lay it all out so there were no secrets between them, but this wasn't the time or place. "I know," he said quietly, "and I promise I'll explain, just not here." She looked like she wanted to push, but someone approached their table and the moment passed. The drive home was quieter. Taehyun could feel Lalima thinking, processing. When they reached her building, she didn't get out immediately. "Taehyun, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." His chest tightened. "Okay. Are you involved in anything illegal?" There it was, the question he'd been dreading. He could lie, should lie, probably, but he'd promised honesty. That's a complicated question, he said carefully. It really isn't. Yes or no. My family's business has many layers. Some of them exist in gray areas, but I personally try to operate within the law as much as possible. As much as possible. Lalima, if I told you everything right now, you'd walk away. I don't want that, but I won't lie to you either. Her hands were shaking slightly. Oh, so there are things you're not telling me. Yes. He watched her process this, saw the conflict in her eyes. Fear warring with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the same pull he'd been feeling since the day they met. I need to think, she said finally. I understand. He wanted to say more, to explain, to make her understand, but he held back. Can I still see you? For work at least? She should say no. Every self-preservation instinct should be screaming at her to run. But she said, the meeting Thursday is still on. The relief was overwhelming. Thank you. She got out of the car without looking back. Taehyun sat there for a long moment after she disappeared inside, his head resting against the steering wheel. He was losing her before he'd even really had her. Unless he could find a way to make her understand that the man he was, the man she was getting to know, was real. That the complications of his world didn't change the truth of his feelings. But how did you convince someone of that, when the complications involved things that would horrify her? Thursday's meeting was perfectly professional. Lalima was efficient, skilled, gave him nothing personal. But she showed up. She did the work. She didn't run. Taehyun held on to that. When the Kenyan partners suggested continuing the discussion over dinner, Taehyun looked at Lalima questioningly. She could have said no, could have claimed another commitment. She nodded yes. The dinner was wonderful. The partners were engaging, warm, genuinely enjoying the evening. One of them, an older woman named Akinyi, seemed particularly taken with both Taehyun and Lalima. When the men stepped away to discuss logistics, Akinyi leaned toward Lalima with a knowing smile. That one is interested in you, she said, nodding toward Taehyun. We're just working together. And I'm just a simple village girl. Akinyi laughed warmly. Child, I've done business for 30 years. I know when a man looks at a woman like she's the only person in the room, he barely takes his eyes off you. Lalima felt her face heat. It's complicated. The good ones usually are. Akinyi patted her hand. But let me tell you what I see. I see a man who listens when you speak, who values your opinion, who treats you like an equal, not an accessory. Those are rare qualities. Whatever complications exist, make sure they're actually deal breakers before you walk away. The words stayed with Lalima through the rest of dinner, through the drive home. Taehyun was quiet, more subdued than usual. The partners really liked you, Lalima said, breaking the silence. They liked you more. Akinyi asked if I was smart enough to realize what I had. What did you tell her? That I was trying very hard to be that smart. Lalima looked out the window at the Seoul streets passing by. Why me? What? You could have anyone. Someone from your world who understands all the complicated parts. Why pursue someone you barely know? Taehyun pulled the car over to a quiet side street, turned to face her fully. Can I tell you something that might sound crazy? At this point, I think I can handle crazy. I feel like I've been looking for you for a very long time, he said quietly. Like part of me recognized you before my brain caught up. And every conversation we have just confirms that feeling. You're kind without being weak, smart without being cruel about it. You see people, really see them. Do you know how rare that is? Her breath caught. Nobody had ever talked about her like that, like she was something precious. You don't even know me, she whispered. Then let me. That's all I'm asking. Let me know you. This was the moment. The fork in the road. She could protect herself, walk away, keep her life simple and safe. Or she could take a chance on this man, who made her feel seen in ways nobody ever had, despite all the warning signs telling her to be careful. Okay, she heard herself say, but slowly, and with honesty. The smile that broke across his face could have powered the whole city. Whatever you need, he promised. He drove her home, And this time when she got out, she looked back. He was watching her with an expression she was starting to recognize. Hopeful, grateful, like she'd given him something invaluable just by saying yes. Inside her apartment, Lalima leaned against the door and wondered what she'd just agreed to. But underneath the worry, underneath the fear, was something else. Excitement. Excitement. Possibility. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something extraordinary. Even if it was complicated. Over the next 2 weeks, Lalima worked on 3 more projects with Taehyun. Each one was legitimate, professional, exactly what he'd promised. But between the meetings, they talked. He asked about her childhood in Tanzania. She told him about growing up in Dar es Salaam, about her grandmother who'd raised her, about deciding to study international relations because she wanted to build bridges between different worlds. She asked about his family. He was more careful here, but he shared some things. His father had built the family business from nothing. His mother had died when he was young. He had responsibilities he couldn't walk away from, even when he wanted to. "Do you ever wish you could just be normal?" she asked one day. They were in his office, supposedly reviewing documents, but mostly just talking. "Every day," he admitted, "but normal isn't really an option for me." "Why not?" "Because people depend on me, and I can't let them down." There was weight in his voice. Burden. Lalima wanted to ask more, to understand, but his assistant knocked, with a reminder about his next appointment. As she gathered her things, Taehyun said, "There's an art exhibition this weekend. Tanzanian artist, actually. Would you want to go?" "Not for work. Just with me. A real date. An actual, official date." Every cautious part of her said to slow down, to keep things professional until she understood what she was getting into. But the part of her that felt alive when she was with him said something different. "What time?" she asked. His smile was worth every risk. Saturday morning, Lalima changed outfits 4 times before settling on something that looked effortless, but had actually taken 40 minutes to put together. Casual but nice. Like she hadn't spent half the morning obsessing over what to wear to an art gallery with a man who made her heart race every time he smiled. When Taehyun picked her up, he was wearing jeans and a simple black shirt. No suit, no business formality. He looked younger like this. More relaxed. The version of himself he probably didn't get to be very often. "You look beautiful," he said when she opened the door. "You look different. Good, different." I figured the CEO look might be a bit much for looking at paintings. The gallery was in Itaewon, a renovated warehouse space filled with natural light. The Tanzanian artist had painted scenes of East African daily life with incredible color and detail. Market scenes bursting with vibrant fabrics. Portraits of women carrying water jugs with such dignity, it made you want to cry. Landscapes that captured the specific quality of light right before sunset. Lalima found herself getting emotional. These images were home. Not the soul she'd built a life in, but the Tanzania that lived in her bones. This one. She stopped in front of a painting of a grandmother and child. The old woman was braiding the girl's hair, both of them laughing. "This could be my grandmother. The way she's looking at that child, that's exactly how my Bibi used to look at me." Taehyun stood beside her, quiet, giving her space to feel. "Do you miss her?" he asked softly. "Every single day. She died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Very sudden." Lalima's voice cracked slightly. "She's the one who encouraged me to come back to Seoul. Said I seemed happiest when I talked about my time here as a student. Said I had a heart that needed the whole world, not just one small part of it." "She sounds like she understood you very well." "She did. Better than anyone." Lalima smiled through the tears threatening to fall. "She used to say that kindness doesn't need translation. That if you see people as people first, everything else becomes easier." Something flickered across Taehyun's face, an expression she couldn't quite read. "That's beautiful," he said. "She must have been an incredible woman." "She was. I wish you could have met her." They spent 2 hours wandering through the exhibition. Taehyun didn't rush her, didn't get bored, didn't check his phone. He just stayed present, asking thoughtful questions about the cultural context of different images, listening when she explained. At one point, he bought her favorite painting, the one of the grandmother and child. Taehyun, no, that's too much, she protested. It makes you happy. That's not too much. The casual way he said it, like her happiness was the most natural priority in the world, made her chest ache. Afterward, they went to a small cafe. Quiet, warm, the kind of place where you could talk for hours. Can I ask you something personal? Lalima said, stirring honey into her tea. Always. Why are you still single? And don't give me some line about not finding the right person. Someone like you, in your position, I'm sure people have been throwing themselves at you. Taehyun looked into his coffee for a long moment. She watched him choose his words carefully. Because none of them were who I was looking for. And who's that? Someone who sees me, not my position or my family name. Someone kind. Someone who makes me want to be better than I am. He looked up, met her eyes. Someone like you. Her heart stuttered. That's a lot of pressure to put on a person. I'm not putting it on you. I'm just being honest about what I feel. They talked until the cafe started preparing to close. About books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, small dreams and big fears. Lalima couldn't remember the last time conversation had flowed so easily, so naturally. When he drove her home, he walked her to her door. I had a really good time today, she said. Good enough to do it again? Maybe. Ask me next week. I'll ask you tomorrow, he said, grinning. She laughed, and the sound made him smile in a way that did dangerous things to her heart. Inside her apartment, Minji called immediately. So, how was the date? How did you even know I had a date? You posted a picture from the gallery on your story. I'm not blind. Also, you're smiling in a way I've never seen before. Who is he? Lalima told her about Taehyun, about the work projects, the charity event, today's exhibition. She left out the parts about his vague answers and the weird power dynamics she didn't understand. He sounds perfect. What's the catch? What makes you think there's a catch? Because you sound nervous, and you're never nervous about guys. Lalima sighed. I think there's more to his story than he's telling me. Nothing concrete, just a feeling that he's holding things back. Well, find out before you get in too deep, but also don't sabotage something good because you're scared. The words echoed in Lalima's head after they hung up. Was she scared? Or was she being smart? The next week brought 2 more dates. A cooking class where they both failed spectacularly at making Korean dumplings and laughed until their stomachs hurt. A quiet dinner at a small restaurant where the owner clearly knew Taehyun well, and they spent 3 hours talking about everything and nothing. Lalima was falling. She knew it. She tried to be careful, tried to maintain some protective distance. But Taehyun made it impossible. He was thoughtful in ways that kept surprising her. He listened, really listened, to everything she said. He never talked down to her or dismissed her opinions. He made her feel valued in a way she'd never experienced before. Then, the strange things started adding up. It was small at first. During one of their dinner dates, Lalima mentioned being tired. The waiter appeared moments later with a specific type of Tanzanian tea. Not generic African tea, but the exact brand her grandmother used to make. How did they have this? She asked, surprised. I might have mentioned you liked it, Taehyun said casually. Ask them to stock some. It was sweet, thoughtful. But that specific brand wasn't available in Seoul. She'd looked. You had to order it directly from a small cooperative near Dar es Salaam. When did you ask them to stock it? A few days ago. But they'd only decided on this restaurant yesterday. And getting specialty tea shipped from Tanzania took at least 2 weeks. The next day, during a work meeting, one of Taehyun's business partners mentioned the Cultural Exchange Scholarship Program. Taehyun said, Lalima actually received one of those scholarships. 10 years ago, wasn't it? She stared at him. I never told you about that. Didn't you? I must have seen it on your professional profile. Except her scholarship wasn't listed on any of her public profiles. It was from a small foundation, not well known, and she'd never thought to include it. Then there was the campus conversation. They were discussing the Kenyan partner's visit when Taehyun mentioned the university where she'd studied. The main auditorium in Building C, that's where the international forums are usually held, right? How do you know which building? Lucky guess. But it wasn't a guess. His eyes had been too certain. Lalima started paying closer attention. Really paying attention. The way he never seemed surprised by anything she told him about her past. How he knew she preferred tea over coffee, even though she drank both around him. The fact that he'd casually mentioned her grandmother's philosophy about kindness without translation, when she was certain she'd never shared that specific phrase with him. One evening, she couldn't take it anymore. They were at his apartment, having dinner he'd cooked. Surprisingly good pasta with spices that tasted like home. Another thing that should have been sweet, but instead made her suspicious. Taehyun, I need you to tell me the truth about something. He set down his fork. Okay. How much did you know about me before we met at that restaurant? His expression became very carefully neutral. What do you mean? Don't do that. Don't play dumb. You know too much. Things I haven't told you. Things you couldn't just guess or find on a professional profile. So I'm asking directly, how much research did you do on me before we met? The silence stretched out. She watched him choose between lying and truth. Some, he admitted finally. How much is some? Enough to know I wanted to meet you properly. Lalima's hands started shaking. That's creepy. You know that's creepy, right? I know how it sounds. Then explain it. Make it make sense. Taehyun stood up, ran a hand through his hair. She'd never seen him look unsettled before. It was almost as unsettling as the revelation itself. I can't tell you everything yet, he said. Not because I don't want to, but because you're not ready to hear it. That's not your decision to make. You're right. You're absolutely right. He turned to face her fully. But I'm asking you to trust me a little longer. I swear to you, everything I've done has been to protect something precious. I'm not trying to manipulate you or control you. I just needed to be sure. Sure of what? That you were really you, he said quietly. That I wasn't building you up in my head into someone you weren't. What did that even mean? I need space, Lalima said, standing up and grabbing her bag. And to think. Lalima, please. No, you want honesty? You want trust? Then give me the truth. All of it. Until you can do that, I need distance. She saw real pain flash across his face, but he didn't try to stop her. I'll take you home, he said. I'll get a cab. At this hour? Please, let me at least make sure you get home safely. The drive was silent, painful. When they reached her building, Lalima got out without saying goodbye. Inside her apartment, she let herself cry. Because she was falling in love with someone who kept secrets, someone who knew her in ways she hadn't given him permission to know, someone who might be dangerous in ways she didn't understand. Her phone buzzed. Minji. Girl, we need to talk. Are you dating Kang Taehyun? Lalima frowned. Why? Because I just heard some things about him, some seriously concerning things. Call me, now. With shaking hands, Lalima dialed. Minji picked up immediately. Okay, don't freak out. But I was at a work dinner tonight, and someone mentioned seeing you with Taehyun. And when I said yeah, you guys had been working together, everyone got really quiet. What do you mean quiet? Like uncomfortable quiet. Like I'd said something wrong. So I asked what the big deal was. Minji paused. Lalima, they said his family is connected. Like seriously connected. To organized crime. The words hit like cold water. That's ridiculous. He's a businessman. That's what they all are on the surface. But the Kang family, apparently they're one of the most powerful crime families in Seoul. They just hide it really well behind legitimate businesses. Who told you this? Multiple people, independently. They were genuinely worried about you. Lalima sat down heavily. It explained so much. The deference, the security, the vague answers about his family business, the gray areas he'd mentioned. Are you still there? Minji asked. Yeah, I'm here. What are you going to do? I don't know. After hanging up, Lalima sat in the dark for a long time. The man she was falling for might be a criminal, or at least connected to criminals. Everything between them might be built on lies and manipulation. Or maybe not lies, a small voice in her head argued. He'd never actually lied to her. He'd avoided, deflected, but when she asked direct questions, he either answered truthfully or admitted he couldn't tell her yet. Her phone buzzed. Taehyun, I know you need space, and I'll respect that. But I need you to know that everything I feel for you is real. Nothing about that has been manipulated or planned. You can believe that or not, but it's the truth. Sleep well, Lalima. She stared at the message for a long time before doing something that surprised herself. She started researching. If Taehyun wouldn't tell her the whole truth, she'd find it herself. The next morning, Lalima called in sick to work. Then she spent hours digging into everything she could find about Kang Taehyun and his family. Kang Enterprises was real. Multiple legitimate businesses, all apparently above board. Import, export, real estate, investments, even some charitable foundations. But when she dug deeper into news archives and business forums, she found hints. Mentions of the Kang family that were always carefully worded, connections to other families with questionable reputations, articles from years ago about investigations that went nowhere. Nothing concrete, nothing provable, but enough smoke to suggest fire. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Mwambene. My name is Detective Park Jinsu. I work with the Seoul Metropolitan Police. I was hoping we could meet for a conversation. Lalima's heart stopped. About what? About Kang Taehyun. I understand you've been spending time with him. I think there are some things you should know. They met at a cafe, far from her usual areas. Detective Park was middle-aged, tired-looking, with the air of someone who'd seen too much. How much do you know about Kang Taehyun? He asked without preamble. Apparently not enough. Why are you asking me about him? Because we've been watching the Kang family for years, and you're the first person Taehyun has shown real personal interest in. That makes you either a potential witness or a potential victim. The word victim made her stomach drop. What does that mean? These organizations, they don't operate like normal people. Relationships are strategic. Alliances, leverage, control. I need to know if he's targeted you for a reason. I'm an interpreter. I have no money, no connections, nothing that would be useful to him strategically. Detective Park leaned back, studying her. Then why you? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Let me tell you what I know about Kang Taehyun, the detective said. On paper, he's clean. Cleaner than his father ever was. He's been systematically legitimizing the family businesses, reducing the criminal elements. We haven't been able to touch him because he's careful. Very careful. But that doesn't mean he's innocent. Has he hurt anyone? Not that we can prove, but the organization he runs has history. Violence, extortion, worse things. Even if he's trying to clean it up, that blood doesn't wash off easily. Lalima felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen this before. Good people getting involved with dangerous people, thinking they can handle it or change them. It never ends well. He slid a card across the table. If you ever need help, or if you learn anything that could help our investigation, call me. She took the card with numb fingers. Walking home, Lalima felt like the ground kept shifting under her feet. Everything she thought she knew kept changing shape. Who was Kang Taehyun really? The patient, thoughtful man who bought her favorite painting? Or the crime boss the detective described? That evening, her phone buzzed. Taehyun, can we talk, please? She should say no, should cut contact completely. Instead, she found herself typing, tomorrow, your office, 2 o'clock. She needed to see his face when she asked him everything. The next day, Lalima arrived at Kang Enterprises exactly at 2. The assistant, Soyeon, showed her in immediately. Taehyun stood when she entered. She saw the same careful control he always had, but his eyes showed worry, fear even. Thank you for coming, he said. I met with a detective yesterday, Lalima said without sitting down. Detective Park. He told me some very interesting things about your family. Taehyun's jaw tightened. Lalima said, he approached you? He's worried I'm being manipulated. Or worse, is he right to worry? About manipulation? No, never. But about the rest? About your family being criminals? Taehyun walked to the window, looked out over Seoul, When he spoke, his voice was steady but heavy. My grandfather started this organization 60 years ago. Back then, it was pure criminal enterprise, protection rackets, gambling, other things I'm not proud of. My father continued that legacy. When he died 5 years ago, leadership fell to me. He turned to face her. I've spent those 5 years trying to transform what we are, moving money into legitimate businesses, cutting ties with the worst elements, phasing out the illegal operations. It's been slow, dangerous work. Some people in the organization resist change violently, but I'm doing it anyway. Why? Because I don't want to be what my grandfather was, what my father was. His voice was intense now, raw. I want to build something clean, something I don't have to hide, something I can be proud of. But you're not clean yet, Lalima said. Are you? No, he admitted. There are still parts of the organization that operate in those gray areas I mentioned. Things I'm working to eliminate, but can't just cut off overnight without starting an internal war. It's complicated. People keep saying that. Complicated. Like it's an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's reality. He took a step toward her. But here's what's not complicated. My feelings for you. Those are the simplest, clearest thing in my life right now. How can I trust that? Her voice broke. How can I trust anything when you won't tell me the whole truth? What do you want to know? Ask me anything. I'll answer. Lalima took a breath. Why did you really hire me? Because I needed an interpreter, and I wanted to see you again. Why did you research me before we met? Taehyun's expression shifted. This was the question he'd been dreading. This was the truth that could either save everything or destroy it completely. Because I'd been looking for you, he said quietly. What does that mean? It means we've met before. 10 years ago. The world tilted. What? The International Forum. You were a student giving a presentation. You were lost, trying to find the auditorium. It was raining and you were panicking because you were running late. Lalima's mind raced back. 10 years ago, the forum, being completely lost on campus, the volunteer who'd helped her, who'd appeared like an answer to a prayer, and then disappeared before she could thank him properly. That was you? Yes. Her legs went weak. She sat down without meaning to. You remembered me? From one meeting 10 years ago? I watched your presentation, Taehyun said, his voice soft now. You talked about building bridges between cultures, about how understanding comes from seeing people as people, not as others. You told a story about your grandmother teaching you that kindness doesn't need translation. Those were the exact words she'd been thinking about in the car, the exact philosophy she'd shared with him without realizing he'd heard it before. And I fell in love with who you were in that moment, he continued, with your warmth and your intelligence, and the way you made everyone in that room care about cultural understanding. I tried to find you afterward. Searched the International Student Office, asked around campus. By the time I got real information, you'd already gone back to Tanzania. Tears were streaming down Lalima's face now. That's insane. I know. I tried to forget you. Tried to move on. But I couldn't. And then my father died and I got pulled into running the family business, and everything became so complicated. But I never stopped hoping I'd see you again. He moved closer, knelt in front of her chair, so they were eye level. For 10 years, I wondered if I'd ever get a second chance. Built half my life hoping and half my life accepting I wouldn't. And then you walked up to me in that restaurant and said, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were waiting for me. His eyes were wet too. And I wanted to tell you right then that I had been. For 10 years, I'd been waiting. Why didn't you tell me? Lalima whispered. Because I wanted you to know me first. Not the memory you might or might not have of a stranger who helped you once. Not the criminal family heir everyone fears. Just me, the person I am now, the person I'm trying to be. His voice cracked. I wanted to earn your feelings honestly. But you weren't honest. You hid this. I know. And I'm sorry. I thought I had more time before you found out everything. I was going to tell you. I swear I was planning to. But I wanted you to trust me first. To see who I really am before the complications colored everything. Okay, I need you to pause right here with me. If you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, if your heart is breaking and soaring at the same time, If you're sitting there with tears in your eyes wondering how this is going to end, I need you to do something. Leave a comment telling me what you think Lalima should do. Should she walk away and protect herself? Or should she take the chance on this man who's loved her for 10 years? I read every comment, and I genuinely want to know what you're thinking. Now let's find out what happens. Lalima covered her face with her hands. This was too much. All of it was too much. A decade of secret love, a criminal empire, lies and truth all tangled together. I need proof, she said through her fingers. Of that day, I need to know you're not making this up. Okay. Taehyun stood, went to his desk, unlocked a drawer. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph, the International Forum, 10 years ago. She saw herself, younger, wearing that traditional Tanzanian dress she'd been so proud of, the one with the bright colors her grandmother had helped her choose. And next to her, smiling slightly as someone took the picture, was a young Taehyun in a volunteer shirt. There were several volunteers in that photo originally, he said quietly. I had this copy made with just us. I've kept it all this time, carried it with me. Sometimes I'd take it out and wonder where you were, what you were doing, if you were happy. She stared at the image. It was real. All of it was real. You've loved me for 10 years, she said, trying to process it. Yes. And you never stopped looking. Never. That's completely insane. Probably, he agreed. But I can't change how I feel. Believe me, it would have been easier if I could have just moved on. But every time I tried to be interested in someone else, I just kept thinking about the girl who talked about building bridges and seeing people as people, the one who made a whole auditorium care about something beautiful. You. Lalima looked at the photograph, then at Taehyun, then back at the photograph. Her younger self, caught in a moment of happiness, standing next to the man who would spend a decade trying to find her again. I need time, she said finally. I need to process all of this. How much time? I don't know, as much as I need. Pain crossed his face, sharp and real, but he nodded. Whatever you need, I'll wait. I'm very good at waiting. She stood up, still holding the folder. Can I keep this? It's yours. It's always been yours. At the door, she paused without turning around. Taehyun, answer me honestly. Are you dangerous? He was quiet for a long moment. She heard him take a breath. To people who threaten what I care about? Yes. To you? Never. I would burn down everything I've built before I let any of it hurt you. She believed him. That was the terrifying, wonderful, impossible part. She actually believed him. For 3 days, Lalima didn't contact Taehyun. She went to work, came home, stared at the photograph, and tried to figure out what she felt. Minji came over with wine and concern. So he's been obsessed with you for 10 years. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard, or the creepiest. That's my problem. I can't figure out which. What does your gut say? Lalima thought about it, really thought about it. That he's telling the truth, that his feelings are real, that he's genuinely trying to be better than his family history, but also that his world is dangerous and complicated, and I don't know if I can handle that. Different question then. Do you love him? I think so, which is stupid because it's only been a few weeks. Sometimes that's all it takes, Minji said gently. My parents decided to get married after 3 weeks. They've been together 35 years now. Your parents weren't involved with organized crime. True, but they had other complications. Every relationship does. Different complications, sure, but every single one has something. Minji poured more wine. The question isn't whether it's complicated. It's whether he's worth the complication. Whether what you feel for him is strong enough to handle the reality of his world. That night, Lalima dreamed about the forum. In the dream, she was lost again, panicking again about being late, and Taehyun appeared to help her just like he had in real life. But this time, instead of just guiding her to the auditorium, he said, I'll wait for you, however long it takes. 10 years or 10,000. I'll wait. She woke up knowing what she needed to do. She texted Taehyun, meet me at the university, the old forum building. Tomorrow at 3. His response came within seconds. I'll be there. The campus looked different after 10 years, but also exactly the same. Buildings had been renovated, new ones added, but the basic layout was familiar. Lalima found the forum building easily this time. She was early, so she walked around, remembering that terrified 20-year-old girl she'd been. "You came." She turned. Taehyun stood a few feet away, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him, vulnerable, in a way that made her heart ache. "I wanted to see it again," she said, "where we met." They walked together, not touching, retracing steps from a decade ago. The auditorium was open, empty. They went inside. "I stood right there," Lalima said, pointing to the podium. "Gave my presentation on cultural exchange programs. I was so nervous I thought I might actually throw up." "You were brilliant," Taehyun said, from where he'd stopped near the back. "Confident, passionate. You made everyone listen, made them care. You really remember it that clearly?" "I remember everything about that day. What you wore, that beautiful traditional dress with the blue and gold patterns, how you smiled when people laughed at your grandmother's story, the way you thanked everyone at the end, in 3 different languages, how your hands shook just slightly when you first started talking, but steadied as you got into the presentation." He looked at her across the empty auditorium. "I remember thinking I'd never met anyone like you, that if I could just know someone like that, really know them, my whole life would be different." Lalima walked to the front of the room where she'd stood 10 years ago. Taehyun stayed in the back where he'd watched from. "I did remember you," she said. "Not your face clearly, but I remembered how you made me feel. Safe, seen, like I mattered. I mentioned you to my grandmother when I got home. Told her about the kind stranger who helped me when I was lost. She said that kind of kindness was rare, and I should remember it. Should try to be that kind of person for others." She was a wise woman. She was. She also said that when someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. So I'm trying to figure out what to believe about you. "And what have you figured out?" Lalima took a breath. "I believe you loved me from that day. I believe your feelings are real, not some manipulation or game. I believe you're trying to be better than your family history, trying to build something clean." She paused. "But I also believe your world is dangerous, that being with you means accepting risks I've never had to think about before, risks that scare me." Taehyun walked down the aisle toward her slowly. "You're right, all of that is true. And if you decide it's too much, I'll understand. I'll hate it, but I'll understand. I won't pressure you or guilt you or try to change your mind." "I'm not finished," she said. "I also believe that you see me, really see me, not some fantasy version. That you listen when I talk, and value what I think. That you've been patient and respectful, even when you could have pushed harder. That you make me feel like I matter, in a way nobody else ever has." Hope sparked in his eyes. "My whole life I've played it safe," Lalima continued. "Followed the rules, made careful choices, protected myself from risk. And where has it gotten me? Lonely, always wondering what if, always choosing safety over possibility." She looked at him directly. "I don't want to live like that anymore." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try, with you, for real. Not just professional meetings or careful dates where we both pretend this isn't what it is. Actually together. But I need complete honesty from now on. No more secrets. No more things you're not ready to tell me. If we do this, we do it with everything on the table." "Done," he said immediately. "Anything you want to know, ask. I'll tell you everything. The good parts, the ugly parts, all of it. Even the dangerous parts? What? Especially those. You deserve to know exactly what you're getting into." Lalima closed the distance between them. "Then tell me the scariest thing about your world. Right now. The thing you least want to tell me." Taehyun didn't hesitate. "The scariest thing is that there are people who would hurt you to get to me. I have enemies. Rivals who would see you as a weakness to exploit. A way to control me. That terrifies me more than anything else in my life. The thought of you being in danger because of me keeps me awake at night." "How do you handle that? The fear?" "Very good security. Careful planning. Never letting my guard down." He paused. "And accepting that some risks are worth taking. That living in fear of losing something precious isn't really living at all. It's just existing." She understood what he meant. She'd been doing the same thing. keeping her heart safe by never really risking it. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay, I'm in. Fully in. We'll figure out the complicated parts together." The smile that broke across Taehyun's face was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. He reached for her hands, held them like they were something infinitely precious. "I have something else to tell you," he said, "while we're being completely honest. I'm not sure I can handle more revelations today. This one is simple. I love you. I've loved you for 10 years, and I'll love you for 10,000 more if you let me. I know it's fast, and it probably sounds crazy, and we're still learning each other, but I needed you to know. I love you, Lalima." Tears welled up in her eyes. Happy ones this time. "I love you too. I don't know exactly when it happened. Maybe the first time you really listened to me. Maybe when you admitted your complications instead of hiding them. Maybe it was always going to happen once we found each other again. But I do. I love you." He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. She felt safe there, cherished, home. They stood like that for a long time in the empty auditorium, where their story had really begun. Finally, Taehyun pulled back just enough to look at her. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Will you marry me?" Lelima's eyes went wide. "What? Now?" "Not right this second, but soon. Whenever you're ready." His expression was serious, vulnerable, completely open. "I've waited 10 years. I don't want to waste any more time wondering what could have been or playing it safe. I want a life with you, a real one. Marriage, partnership, building something together, if you'll have me." Before today, the answer would have been no. Too fast, too soon, too much. But standing here, in the place where it all started, looking at the man who'd loved her before he even really knew her, who'd spent a decade hoping for another chance, Lalima found her answer was different. "Yes," she said. "Not today, not tomorrow, but yes, soon. Let's build something together." The kiss that followed was gentle, sweet, full of promise and possibility. Not a dramatic movie moment, just two people who'd found each other twice, choosing not to let go again. When they finally left the campus, walking hand in hand through the spring evening, Lalima felt different, lighter, like she'd been carrying fear for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to just trust. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I introduce you to my world properly. The good parts and the complicated parts. You meet the key people in the organization, understand what my daily life actually looks like, and then we plan a wedding that blends Tanzanian and Korean traditions and makes both our families happy. You make it sound simple. The important parts are simple. Everything else is just logistics." Over the next month, Taehyun kept his promise. He showed her everything. She met Junho, his second in command, a serious man who clearly respected Taehyun deeply and was cautiously welcoming to Lelima. She toured the businesses, understood the scope of what Taehyun was building. She sat in on meetings where he negotiated with the old guard about phasing out remaining illegal operations. It was tense, careful work, but she saw his skill at navigating impossible situations. She also saw the security measures. The bodyguards who stayed close, the careful routes they took, the protocols designed to keep them safe. "Is it always like this?" she asked one evening after a particularly security-heavy event. "It gets more routine, you stop noticing after a while." "But yes, security is always a factor. I can handle it," she decided, "as long as you're honest about the risks. Always." 3 months after their reunion, Taehyun took her to dinner at the same restaurant where they'd first talked. Private room, beautiful food, just the two of them. After dessert, he pulled out a small box. "I know you already said yes," he began, "but I wanted to do this properly." Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single perfect diamond that caught the light. "Lalima Mwambene, you walked into my life twice. Once when I was a student who didn't know what he was looking for, and once when I was a man who'd built everything but still felt empty. You've made me believe in second chances and honest love, and building something real together. Will you marry me? Will you take a chance on building a life with me despite all the complications?" She was crying again, happy tears that wouldn't stop. "Yes, absolutely yes, forever yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit. "How did you know my size?" she asked, laughing through tears. "I asked Minji. No secret investigation this time. I promise. Just regular sneaky planning." She laughed harder. "I love you. I love you too. For 10 years and counting." The wedding planning was exactly as complicated as Taehyun had predicted. His family's expectations, Lalima's desire for something meaningful, cultural traditions from two different worlds that needed to blend respectfully, security that had to be planned without making the day feel like a military operation. But they worked through it together. Compromised, listened to each other, made decisions as true partners. Lalima's family flew in from Tanzania 2 weeks before the wedding. Her aunts, uncles, cousins, all somewhat overwhelmed by Seoul and stunned that she was marrying into one of the city's most powerful families. But when they met Taehyun, when they saw how he looked at her, they understood. Her favorite uncle, the one who was most like her grandmother, pulled her aside the day before the wedding. "Your Bibi would be so proud," he said, eyes wet. "You found someone who sees your heart, who values your mind, who loves you exactly as you are." The wedding itself was beautiful. They held it at a cultural center that Taehyun's foundation supported, a space designed for exactly this kind of cultural blending. Traditional Korean and Tanzanian elements woven together seamlessly. Music from both cultures. Food that celebrated both heritages. Decorations in colors that meant something to both families. Lalima wore her grandmother's wedding necklace with a gorgeous hanbok for the Korean ceremony, then changed into traditional Tanzanian dress for the second celebration. Taehyun wore both formal Korean attire and later changed into clothing that honored her culture. When Lalima walked down the aisle, Taehyun watched her like she was the only person in the world. Like that 20-year-old volunteer had watched a nervous student give a presentation 10 years ago. Same love, deeper now, tested and chosen, and real. Their vows were simple, promises of honesty, partnership, patience, and enduring love. They exchanged rings, kissed softly, while everyone cheered in 2 languages. At the reception, people whispered about how unexpected the match was. The powerful Kang family heir and a Tanzanian interpreter. But anyone who watched them together understood completely. During their first dance, Taehyun whispered, "I still can't quite believe this is real, that you're real, that you chose this." "Believe it," she whispered back. "You're stuck with me now. Best thing that ever happened to me." Later, when they were cutting the cake, someone made a joke about Lalima accidentally flirting with a crime boss and ending up married to him. Everyone laughed. Lalima and Taehyun shared a look. Let them think what they wanted. They knew the truth. Their story hadn't started with accidental flirtation at a restaurant. It had started 10 years earlier with a lost girl and a kind stranger, with a presentation about building bridges, with a young man who'd fallen in love with possibility and spent a decade hoping. The restaurant had just been the universe giving them a second chance, and they'd both been smart enough to take it. The party went late into the night. Dancing, laughter, joy. 2 families, 2 cultures, one celebration of love that transcended all the complications. But eventually, Taehyun and Lalima slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking Seoul. "So," she said, leaning against him, "we actually did it. We did. You're officially stuck with a complicated man with a questionable family history and security concerns. And you're stuck with a woman who asks too many questions and won't let you hide in gray areas and will probably drive you crazy. Sounds absolutely perfect to me." They looked out over the city lights, all the people living their own complicated stories. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't found each other again?" Lalima asked. "Sometimes, but I think we would have eventually. Some things are just meant to be. Some people are worth waiting for." "You really waited 10 years. I really did, and I'd do it again." She turned to face him. "No more waiting. We're here now. Together. That's all that matters." "Together," he agreed. "For the rest of our lives. Some stories really do have happy endings. Some people really are worth waiting for. Some love really does transcend every complication and obstacle and fear. This was one of those stories, and it was just beginning."